Witch, putting the K in magic. I'm Joanna DeVoe, and you're watching another episode of Every Which Way. And this time I got to talk to Dayna Martin of DaynaMartin.com. She wrote a book called Radical Unschooling. A Revolution Has Begun, and you can get that book online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or just go to her website, DaynaMartin.com. And she is someone who's completely new to me. One of you lovely viewers requested that I interview her, and I was just so intrigued by what unschooling is and what radical unschooling is and how this woman has gone about raising her family of 4 kids along with her husband. It is a really unique way of life, and she's a person that really thinks outside the box, but she's also a very hands-on, caring mother. So I just thought, well, that's kick-ass. A person who thinks for themselves, that's kick-ass. So I hope you think the same, and here she is, Dayna Martin. Hi, Dayna. Welcome to Every Which Way.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm excited to get to know you a little bit better. One of my viewers recommended that I interview you, and so you're new to me. Your website and your videos, it was really fun going through all that material. From what I understand, you are kind of a spokesperson for a movement that's going on right now about unparenting. And you even wrote the book on it. You wrote a book called Radical Unparenting. Can you start with unparenting before we get into the radical part of it?
Actually, it's Radical Unschooling.
Oh, unschooling. I'm sorry. What did I say?
It's okay. I mean, people confuse it all the time. In fact, unschooling has been, some people have called it unparenting, which isn't an accurate term for it, but I'm happy to share the difference. I wrote the book called Radical Unschooling, A Revolution Has Begun, introducing people to the concepts of partnership parenting. You know, traditionally, culturally, we do what's called authoritarian parenting, and that's when the focus of parenting is on behavior and obedience and compliance, and that's like Nanny 911, and 99% of parenting books on the market today are focused on meeting the parents' needs, and the parents' needs for, uninterrupted sleep and obedience and compliance. And this perspective and philosophy of radical unschooling takes it to the level of focusing on the needs under the behavior. So it's and working together with your kids in partnership and helping them get what they want in life and pursuing your passions together. So there's a lot to it, but I'm happy to share, whatever interests you.
And it's a little bit, we should have unparenting. I think some people could be reparented, I think. But what you're talking about is different than what a lot of us think of when we think of kids who are homeschooled, because there is no set curriculum. How does that work?
Yeah, well, I'd say, over 90% of people that homeschool buy a curriculum, and they do what schools do at home at the kitchen table, and basically, run through the same type of, agenda. But unschooling is really different. It's living life as though school doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that learning isn't important to us or that education isn't important to unschoolers. It's just kind of more of a leading edge way of looking at learning. It's realizing that learning comes when humans are internally motivated and not when they're forced to learn something. So to me, it's like this, approach where we're respecting kids on a new level that we generally haven't in our culture. Much in the same way that, the feminist movement, women's rights have come to be, when it wasn't that long ago that men were told to beat their wives if dinner wasn't on the table on time. And we've come so far from that, and that would be so unacceptable, for fathers to pass down that information of, forcing obedience on kids and so on their wives. Sorry, my husband just walked in and distracted me.
Speaking of which.
I got thrown way off talking about that. But anyway, what I'm saying is, it's time for the same kind of rights to be, in my view, children to be viewed in the same kind of respect. So we don't believe in punishing our kids. We don't believe in forced chores. We don't believe in anything like that. And when people hear that, I think for the first time they think to themselves that it must be total anarchy in your home. But in fact, it's the total opposite. And I believe that respect begets respect. And when we're kind and loving and respectful to our kids, that's what they learn, and that's what they give back to us. So, our focus is on joy.
How many kids do you have?
I have 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls.
How old are they? I'm just curious because I'm wondering how the theory has played out. Has your experience been in alignment with the theory?
Yeah, and in fact, we started doing this from the beginning. My son Devin is 13, and he was born on Columbine. Interestingly enough, that after I gave birth to him, I was holding him, and the nurse turned on the TV, and Columbine was happening live, and it was a real pivotal point in my life. I'm sorry. Let me just get my dog out here. I apologize.
It's okay.
So you get to see the real life here.
Yeah.
Kids and chaos, and even when this is planned to have this interview time, the kids still come first. So,
Columbine,
yeah, it was a real pivotal point in my life. I was watching, this tragedy happen as I'm holding a newborn, and it hit me that my kids never had to go to school. I just had this thought that I would always give them free choice. So it wasn't necessarily that I made this choice out of fear that, my kids are going to get shot. It wasn't in a fearful place. It was just this awareness that, wow, how many of those kids that were, involved in that tragedy really would have rather have been home with their families, pursuing their own interests. And it just made me always know that my kids would always have the choice where they want to be. And so to me, it's like basic human rights. It's not an anti-school approach as much as it is like a free choice kind of approach toward education.
Legally, do we have a choice? Is this something that you can do without bringing a lot of trouble on you from the government? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, unschooling is legal in all 50 states. So, there's lots of ways.
You just sign a waiver or something, like, leave me alone?
You just go through the regular hoops that you would for homeschooling. And you just share that you're homeschooling, and there's lots of different ways to go about it. If you did a Google search for unschooling, in your state, you'd find a lot of great information.
Cool. You mentioned you kind of compared it to the feminist movement. Is it women who are at the forefront of this movement and pushing it forward, or is it generally a mix?
It's a true mix. I run a yearly conference in New Hampshire in the White Mountains called the Life Rocks Conference, and we have just as many speakers and advocates that are passionate about this life that are male as well as female. John Taylor Gatto is a pioneer who wrote the book Dumbing Us Down, and he introduced a lot of people to the true reasoning behind school and why it was developed and so forth. And it was kind of there's this process that needs to go on for people, I think, if they're going to walk this path. It's called deschooling. And you kind of have to unbrainwash yourself as a parent to realize how conditioned you are to see learning in a certain way and education in a certain way. And so kids come to this life really easy. Pursuing your passions and interests and having your parents facilitate that is awesome and feels good. And kids really love it. But parents are the ones that have to do all the work, I think, when they come to this life.
And is it nature driven? Are you side by side with your child, or are they sitting and playing Xbox for 8 hours because that's what they want to do? Do they have that choice if they want?
It could be either, actually. And it's a philosophy based in the respect that I don't hold any higher value to video games over learning about Egyptian history. I don't. I trust my child on their path, and I know that they learn from everything they do, including video games. My son Devin, my 13-year-old, learned to read through playing video games. He was internally motivated to chat with his friends, and so he learned to read through total immersion, through just chatting with them and being read to, and having him surrounded with a written word through magazines and both the internet, books, everything. And so I know the value in video games, so I respect if they want to play for long periods. When kids don't have limits on these types of things, like media, video games, TV, they find their own balance with it. It's amazing, much in the same way we do. We find our balance with things. There's times where we're really passionate about something, though, where it's all we want to do. We wake up and we're researching it. I know you must know. I'm the same, way as any other human, and I get passionate about something, and that's all I want to live and breathe. And so I understand that my kids are the same way. They're human. My son Devin, if he gets a new game, he's going to be passionate about it until he's kind of, met that need, and then he'll go on to something else. So it's kind of like looking at life through your child's eyes, remembering what it felt like to be that age, and yeah.
So it's not about being cut off from society because they're still watching television and using their computers, and they're a part of the modern. Sorry, this is very new to me. It's something I've heard about, but I'm really through your website learning about this. And I'm assuming I'm not alone in this. It's a very, I don't know, it's not something that's presented too often in the mainstream media, except in a derogatory way. So I have lots of questions.
No, please. I mean, I love that you're asking these questions. There's no silly questions. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty incredible how they're totally respecting their choices completely. So, what was your question again?
Oh, just about the media. Sorry, I went off
on
a
a
rant there.
No, it's okay. I'm happy to bounce all over. I love to, do interviews like that for sure. But my son, they're very involved in what's going on with pop culture. We want to give them as big of a world as possible to learn from, not keep them in a little box of our ideals. We bring as much of the world as possible to our kids through travel. We've traveled a lot. We went to Australia a couple times and to Europe. I know not everybody can afford to do that kind of thing, but there are ways to get what you want in life without money. And so I think that whole spiritual kind of perspective really goes hand in hand with this lifestyle, that our kids know that they can have whatever they want in life. And part of our role is to help them get that. So, we travel, we do watch TV, we have Netflix, and we watch a lot of fun series together, both what would be deemed educational and not. A lot of cooking shows, a lot of Discovery Channel, History Channel, we love that. But we also love, different series that we enjoy together. So we talk about things and discuss, what's going on in our area with news and so forth. But we like to focus on all the good that's in the world. We don't sit and watch the news together generally and, focus on the negative.
Yeah. How do they get their socialization? Do they participate in any kind of groups, or do they just hang out with the neighborhood kids or just each other? How does that work?
Well, it's interesting. It's shifted over the years as the kids have gotten older. I'd say a big majority of their socialization is unschooling gatherings and Skype, the phone. Hanging out with neighborhood kids has not really gone that well for Devin, who's 13, because the kids are really different, he says. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to have, if you ever want to interview him and talk to him about his experience with that, he'd love to do it. But he says that the kids are really different and kind of mean to him, and mean in general to each other, kind of mean-hearted compared to unschoolers.
Yeah, I can see that. That's sort of the environment of school. Yeah. It's competitive. Do you think that might be a problem when they're adults? Like if he chooses to go participate in a traditional work setting, do you think it's going to be a setback for him, or how?
Oh, because I mean, not any more than it would be for us. I mean, I can't really see my kids choosing a traditional work setting. In fact, this, part of this philosophy is raising free-thinking entrepreneurs, kids that are motivated to make money through something they love, doing. And my kids they've had their own businesses. My daughter has a pet sitting business, and she's only 10. My son, Devin, has Etsy shops, and so we work for ourselves. That's part of, living our dream.
That is cool.
I definitely think that they'd be more apt to work for themselves. But if they wanted to work for somebody else because it was something they were driven to do, they would just jump through the hoops, and I think they'd adjust fine. I don't think that you can get somebody used to cruelty by being cruel, so I wouldn't put them in, think that they're at a setback because they're not in, a cruel environment, for example, or an unjust environment. I don't think that's setting them back, at all. I think that they're gaining more self-confidence every year that goes by, and I have total faith that they'll be fine.
I'm wondering about how this runs the gamut between parents like yourself who are, passionate about being involved in their child's education, even if it is driven by their own interests and inspiration, and then someone that might be like, oh, this is cool, and then just kind of coasts through it and leaves their kids unattended. I did see a television show where they featured a family like that, and their house is destroyed and the kids are climbing on the tables and they're extremely obese, and that is how they represented people who unschool their kids. And I'm thinking, gosh, it takes one family to give them a bad name, or maybe they just slanted the representation. What do you find within the community?
I love that you bring that up, because I think that is one of the biggest misrepresentations of unschooling. Let me put it this way. Unschooling is not for the lazy parent. It's a really hands-on role. We're constantly facilitating our children's desires to explore new things and so forth. But I think it does have a bad rap. Some people think that unschooling is not doing anything, or unparenting. And it's too bad it's shown like that in the media sometimes. But the truth is, this is something that you really got to want to love doing. I mean, I love pursuing my passions with my kids and helping them in that way. So I think that's a false representation. And I think that the people that are drawn to a life like this hopefully will see through that and keep pursuing it through other resources.
Do they have consequences? I know you said it's no punishment, but like what if, your son goes and bops his sister in the face? How, I know you're going to ask him, like, how do you feel? Why did you do that? But is there a consequence in place, or is it for them to work out amongst themselves?
Well, I mean, people ask me, how are your kids going to learn about consequences in life? And I like to say that in the same way that I learn, I mean, our kids are part of the real world. There are real limits, laws, and boundaries all over, us every day. They've seen me getting pulled over with a speeding ticket. They've seen that we have to stand in line at the grocery store. I mean, they learn like those social like etiquettes and cues and laws just by being immersed in the real world side by side with me. I don't need to set up a little mini society with arbitrary rules to teach them that. Do you know what I mean? Like they're part of it. So I wouldn't like punish him for that, but I would really like open my heart to understanding that, for one, my son's never done that. I do want to say that he's never punched his sister in the face.
Nice.
Which is nice. I mean, things have gotten kind of tense. Like, I don't mean that I have kids that never fight. They do have their fair share of arguments, but yeah, I mean, if they're arguing, I would help them, if they needed help. There's times where I'll ask them if they're kind of starting to argue, do you guys need any help? And sometimes they'll say, no, we've got it. But I check in with them. Like, I don't believe in just letting kids, like, beat the crap out of each other until it's resolved between them. It's my role to be there for support and for love and to make sure everybody's safe. So instead of going, stop hitting, you're punished, go to your room, I might be like, guys, what's going on? Like, authentically approach it. I think there's an idea that, like, if you're not doing something traditionally or culturally parenting-wise, that you kind of slip into this, like, natural parenting role. And you're sweet talking all the time, and like, so guys, how are you feeling right now? And that's not authentically me. I don't roll like that. I don't talk to people like that. So for me to come from an authentic place, I would be like, guys, what's going on? Come on, stop hitting each other. Let's talk about this. How can I help you? Like I would approach it like I would, I don't know, like a friend, or my husband.
You didn't grow up like this, right? So
no.
What have you, has it been like a huge learning curve for you as well? Do you find, since you're so hands-on, like, do you find that you're learning alongside them?
Yeah, from the beginning, I thought that my role as a mother would be to, like, instill all my knowledge into my kids and, train them in a sense, like I was taught, but it wasn't like that at all. In fact, my kids have taught me more than I could ever teach them about life and learning and love. And so I'm learning as I'm going. I'm always deschooling and, unbrainwashing and, conditioning myself of, like, cultural ways to interact with kids. Because, this is the ideal that I live by, but it's not who I am probably 98% of the time. I do have days where I have bad days and I might not be the parent I want to be. But I think the difference is having the ability to apologize to your kids and say, I'm sorry, I was really hungry and grumpy and I didn't mean to treat you that way. And so there is room for error.
Yes.
Humans.
I apologize to my son, and I find that in doing that, he'll apologize to me. He'll come in an hour later, he'll be like, I'm sorry I was mean to you, Mom. It's very sweet. Or I thank him, and he shocked me the other day. He just came in and said, thank you, Mom, for doing whatever, and I was like, my son just thanked me. It was like, it was an afterthought, like something he had been thinking about. I thought that was so cool.
Awesome. Yeah. How old is your son?
He's 18, but he has autism, so fairly severe autism. So he went through a crazy school process, and it always drove me crazy because even more so than so-called regular people, they are each so individual. You can't just stand in front of a classroom and teach 10 people with autism. They just won't do it. They just refuse. So once he got out of that system and now he's in something called transition, it's more experiential, and it reminds me a little bit of what you're talking about. It's more structured, but it's about being in the community and playing sports, and he's worked a job, and his learning curve is just like whoosh. He's enjoying himself because he's having fun. He's not being made to, try to work out some problem on a piece of paper. His mind just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing I love about unschooling is you really get to learn like what kind of learner your children are and be able to bring as much of their resources into their life to nurture their interests through that medium. My daughter Tiffany, she's 10. She loves structure. It's funny. People have always said the old saying is that children love structure, but the truth is that that's not true. The truth is some do, and it's not this big guessing game. Your kids will let you know if they do. I just trust them and I trust their words. And so my daughter Tiffany, has a rhythm of her day more than the other kids, and she likes to know what's going on every day and likes to shower at 10 p.m. every night and brush her hair. And she has her routine, that I respect, and it's part of my role to facilitate that, kind of scheduled, structured day for her because she asks me for that, she wants that, and she thrives in that. Where my son Devin would, stay up till 5 in the morning chatting with his friends in Australia and just sleep half the day away. He's at that stage of his teen years now, so. I'm learning every day as I go on, but I'd say the goal of I'm sorry to interrupt you, go ahead.
No, I was interrupting you, actually.
But the goal of our life together is pursuing our passions and interests and living in joy. And everything else is secondary. Education is not the goal of unschooling. However, it happens as a side effect of just being happy together and pursuing your interests in life. And it never has to be forced. It never has to be uncomfortable or negative. It's a really joy-based existence.
That is sweet. Follow your bliss as a family. Have you always been a person that thinks outside the box? I really gravitate toward people like that. I love people who think for themselves and create their own version of the dream, whatever that is for each individual.
I love that you say that because our family blog, it's called The Sparkling Martins, and it says living the dream on the top header of it because I really feel like we are, our own dream. We're really happy, and we have vision boards for our family where we, put our goals and dreams together that we want to pursue. And I think what makes this life stand out more than a mainstream existence is the idea of living in the present. I think culturally, traditionally, it's like preparation of the future all the time for kids. Everything's preparation for adulthood. Kids are rarely encouraged to ever be present, and I want my children to enjoy their childhood. So I'm always, in a state of practicing, living in the now, and they do too, just naturally. So.
Wow, that is profound. That is a spiritual lesson that is very much in the air, lately, people talking about living in the now, but I've never actually considered how much when you're in school, it's so future oriented, and all you're doing is dreaming about recess.
Yeah, and so kids naturally come to this life. I really feel like this is as natural as you could get parenting-wise or educationally. I think, again, that it's the parent that has to do the work to, uncondition yourself and to learn a new way to be. And to know that this isn't just for, people on the fringe, that this isn't just like hippies, doing this kind of thing at all. I mean, we are like the average family, I guess you could say. I have something called the Unnanny, a program where people hire me to go into their homes and work with them to help them really apply this kind of life. It's almost like what Nanny 911 does, but with this philosophy.
Right.
And I've worked with families, oh my gosh, these people are amazing, like CEOs of companies and, lawyers, doctors that have been turned on to this understanding of life, and they've never looked back. I mean, it's a leading edge approach and not some strange fringe thing, because once people hear about children's rights and they kind of understand it from that perspective that how unjust life is for kids, once you learn it, you can't go back. You can't unlearn something like that.
I imagine seas of kids going, yeah! Because that's how we all feel when we're kids,
Right. And I think it's also, the idea that believe that children are inherently good, that they want to do good. Their default state is goodness, but we as a culture don't look at them like that. We look at them with negative intent. I mean, I know that's how I was looked at. That's how a lot of people are approached in school and so forth. But I always assume positive intent for my kids. And through that understanding and being on that vibration, they are really good people that make awesome choices for themselves. So it takes a lot of trust, to realize how conditioned we were and how we were viewed as kids and kind of healing from that. It's a healing journey as well.
Yeah, you went to traditional school when you were growing up, right? Both you and your husband?
Yep.
Yep. Did you have to convince him to do this, or did you guys decide this together?
No, he was on board right away. He dropped out of high school. He was really squashed by the system. Mm-hmm. I graduated, an average student. School to me was not a fun place to be in my teen years. I just wanted to be out doing adult things. I wanted to be doing, or what not even adult things, but things that I should have had the right to do. You know, I had a band and I wanted to be focused on that all the time. And I was really getting into cooking and nature and things like that. And instead I was learning about things or being forced to take tests about things that had no interest in me. I lost my childhood. I truly believe that who could I be today? I mean, I love who I am. Don't get me wrong. I'm so grateful of who I am on my path, but who could we be if we were allowed to be free, you know, to make our own choices? And that's the gift I want to give through this life for my kids, is for them to like have the most perfectly individualized education. You know, we're not all meant to do the same thing in life, and so why would kids all learn the same thing?
Yeah, I guess we're about to find out with this next generation of kids that are being raised this way, what the difference is, what kind of adults this creates. I'll definitely be watching to find out. I have a feeling, at least your kids, from what you've said, they seem like they're going to be doing okay.
Yeah.
What do the grandparents think? Do you or your husband have any parents that are like, this is awful, why are you doing this to my grandkids? Or
yeah, we do actually. Yeah, we have two sets. My mother and her husband live in England, and they're really supportive. Always have been. They help facilitate the kids' passions, buy them magazine subscriptions according to what their interests are. You know, they really have always nurtured this life. And then my husband's parents are not so in agreement. They are more traditional. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, you're like a rebel woman.
You know, it's funny because I've always had that kind of edge to me ever since I was probably, 11, 12, 13 years old. I always listened to like heavy metal music and kind of hung out with the maybe darker kids, Black Leather, and I was kind of more fringe, but I always enjoyed learning and growing, and so that whole radical rebel, side to me is just part of who I am, I guess.
I'm so glad that Christy's her name pointed you out to me, because I'm all about kick-ass women creating the life of their dreams, and you definitely personify that. Can we leave people with your one tip for how to create the kick-ass life of your dreams?
Just strive for more and more freedom, because there's always more freedom to be had, and more just personal growth, and know that we're never done. We're always learning and growing, and you can be best friends with your kids. You can be their parent and their best friend and have the most amazing relationship, of connection rather than control. And so those would be my parting words. Trust your kids.
Oh, thank you so much, Dayna. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I can't wait to see more of what you have to offer.
Nice. Much love. Peace.